Okay. We're live! Okay, cool. I'm doing well. I was working an event on Friday and I didn't get home until late. And then Saturday I napped for a good portion of the day and then I was doing some like astrology stuff. So yeah. And then
Nice.
today I did some more astrology stuff. What else have I been doing today? Cleaning my house.
That's always
Yeah, not
nice.
anything. Yeah, just some like, um, yeah, I guess still resting, recouping, but just getting my space more situated. I swept and mopped the floors, I cleaned my tub.
Nice.
Yeah, all
That
sorts of
feels
good stuff.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that.
Mhm.
God, that's what Sunday is for me. It's just like cleaning and regrouping.
Yeah, it's an important time.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, how are you? What have you been up to?
I had some friends stop by. One of them is looking to buy a bike, and he wanted to try out my bike to see if he liked the frame and the sizing. So he just
Nice.
like stopped by and absconded with it and left his girlfriend with me, and we talked about books for a long time.
Oh,
So,
fun. Okay.
yeah.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, it was. And then, he came back and we talked about bikes for a bit, and all of us just sat around probably for longer than anybody really meant to, because by the time those two left, I was like, oh, I'm going to be meeting John, and like, really. So I was glad when you texted and were like, can we do a little bit later? Because that was
Okay.
perfect for me. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad. I'm
Yeah.
glad. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we had the full moon on Friday in Taurus, and that was like it's actually really grounding energy for the most part. Like it's unexpectedly stable and consistent. I think the astrology the past couple of weeks has been pretty chaotic, and we've had the election, and we've had all of these events happening, and
Right.
I think there was like this is how I experienced it. Even working that event I was at, it was like there was this calm energy, and I think a lot of people were like just kind of called to just have a respite unexpectedly. Like there was a sense of stability amongst all the chaos I felt.
Cool.
Yeah.
I love that description.
Mhm.
It's so reassuring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of chaos in the world right now, but I don't think it's like I never see any of it as like bad. It's just how you say. It's just like information and research, and like we learn from it, just experiencing it as souls. That's my perspective. Like we're all gonna die and like return to where we come from. But then yeah, so it's just like okay, let's enjoy the ride.
Yeah, I love that. And you do a lot of different types of work in
Mhm.
it's not just astrology that you do. You are active in several other areas of healing
Yeah,
work, isn't that right?
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
I
that's three different lenses at least that you're looking through.
Yeah, so I do the work with astrology. I'm a soul-based astrologer. So I what I do with that, it kind of is like bringing in the energies and archetypes of astrology and applying it more so on a soul level. So uh, how you say like a kind of exoteric astrology, it'll focus more on like, oh, you're a Gemini, you have your sun in Gemini, so you'll exhibit these kinds of traits, like you'll be very social, X, Y, or Z. And a soul-based astrology, you see Gemini more so as like, okay, so part of your soul yearning is to connect and like gather information and be able to relate it. Um, in a way where there's a balance between like love and wisdom,
Hmm.
not like going so far into wisdom where you become cold, but also like holding that space for love, um, and not going so far into love where you're boundaryless. That's just one example, but yeah. So it's like that's part of what I do with astrology. I also am finishing up a certification in hypnosis through the Wellness Institute. That has been amazing. That's like
Yeah.
my yeah. Um, yeah, that's and cozy. We've done some stuff
A
to,
little,
with we've
yeah.
done a session together. And yeah, it's really I mean, yeah. What did you think of it in terms of what the practice was?
It was such a opportunity to create space in an area of myself, or like a part of myself that makes decisions, or that decision making comes from, and to really be present with myself, um, in a way that I wasn't given the opportunity to at the time that we were like kind of really getting into. I was explaining it a little bit to my friends the other day, talking about being given a space to reconceptualize or relearn something, that I had learned kind of and internalized improperly, and being a space holder for that, and like being able to not only like help me navigate into these spaces, but also think about them in ways that are oriented towards healing and presence, and like building relationship, like trust relationship with myself. It was really cool. And then the process of um, kind of building like tools for thinking about it again in the future in ways that are helpful was really great. And so the like structure of it was evident to me just by how effective it was on me. And I could see that a lot of like thought and like skill training had gone into that work that you were doing. So
Oh, to
I
hear.
thought it was really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so glad. Yeah, no, that warms my heart to hear. Yeah, it was yeah, you did really amazing work in the session. Like we went really deeply and you were open to the process.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, it was really yeah, just really a
It was.
powerful session. So I mean, I was grateful to have guided you through the process, but you did amazing work, and being open to it, and really, yeah, it was great.
I could tell that was a huge part of it, was being like ready to trust the process.
Yeah,
So I think that the work that we did also just in the micro moments of like starting that process together, like even just from when we met the first time, every last part of just kind of building trust went into how safe I felt,
yeah,
leaning into that process, especially with you as a space holder, but also with how confident you were in like guiding the process. Like that relationship started when we met, and we worked on it kind of together to like make it so effective and powerful,
sure.
right? That's
Yeah,
how,
yeah,
yeah, I feel like, yeah, if you hadn't been the type of person that I felt safe, with in that kind of space, I don't think we could have, or I could have leaned into it with that much willingness to trust.
yeah. No, I appreciate that. That's really wonderful to hear. I think it is that trust that's so important because I think tying in astrology, we're going.
And I don't know anything about astrology really, so I'm just constantly learning about astrology.
Yeah. Oh, that's totally cool. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I quite honestly like it's not I don't in my day-to-day thinking I'm not like, "Oh, Pluto's here today." So like, oh, or like I do I do think of those events happening, Pluto especially because it's a more generational planet, but I'm not And maybe I should more so. That would probably make my life a little easier if I was more conscious of it, like, like in my day to day. But so I think that especially in terms of trust, right now we have Pluto moving from Capricorn into Aquarius. And Pluto is like it's about a depth of understanding, and on a collective level where it is in the zodiac represents um how you say how we view power, how we view like collective power, as
Mm.
well as kind of the underbelly of society and the world more broadly as
Hmm.
we experience it. And then individually, it represents how we experience power within ourselves. So
Wow.
when, so I think a lot of times issues of power, they bring up issues of trust, yeah,
Yeah.
because we want to be, well, I think the best kinds of like trusting relationships, you don't feel like you need to be in control, but you also don't need to feel like you are controlled. It's more of just being present with the other person, yeah. And so there's
Yes, totally. Yeah.
yeah. So there's that like just there's that trust because you see the person as like you, and you show, for me, what I find, we met when I was like working as a
Mm.
fundraiser for
Mm-hmm.
like canvassing, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For I got maybe I won't mention the names, just
Right, but for trees,
right.
trees, we,
For
yeah, for
right, for the
nature,
trees
for
and the
nature,
bees,
yeah, and the
yes.
bees, yep.
Um yeah, for an for an
For the
environmental
environment, yeah.
nonprofit. And I think one of the things I learned through that was like building trust with other people. It comes through showing other people that you're similar to them and that you're like them. And I think you do that by liking other people.
That's
Because when you show
powerful.
other,
Yeah.
yeah, because when you show other people that they're likable, they like themselves. And if you're able to see that in other people, they, maybe they will see qualities of themselves in you as well that they like. And we like what's similar to us, right?
Yeah.
On a psychological. Um, but anyways, back to like Pluto and trust. So like when it's moving from Capricorn, which is very boundaried, it's more like in these past, it went into Capricorn in 2008, so it's been there for about 16 years. We had this housing crisis, or how you say, well, yeah, as a result of like mortgages were really just like approved very quickly. But when Pluto went into Capricorn from Sagittarius, there was more of like this, like, oh my gosh, wait, like people can't actually pay their mortgages. Like,
Oh
why
my.
did we approve these? Like, what's going on? And so there was like this, like, just the housing market was just like crap.
Right.
But then as it transited through Capricorn, we started to lose trust in a lot of like authority figures that we've seen, because that underbelly of like the ultra wealthy or the people that are just kind of like hold authority in our systems and in our society. Capricorn is the builder of society. With Pluto transiting through it, it's like all that darkness kind of came to the light, and we started to see where corruption is present. Um, and that's not only in politics and like the economic realm, but also in entertainment. We see all these things
Mm.
coming up about, you know, these child abusers, to put it
Mm-hmm.
lightly.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh my god. Like, and there's some people that have been like, bitch, I've seen this for years. Like, you
Right.
guys are just catching
This,
up, and it's like,
yeah.
yo, sure, sure. Um, but yeah, it's just like in a collective sense, all that people who hold authority are kind of being, yeah, brought to the light, and their corruption is brought to the light. When it goes into Aquarius, which it's actually going into Aquarius solidly on the 19th, we start to understand and find power in our collective, connective relationship with humanity. And there's
Cool.
power, yeah, and there's power in uniqueness and also acceptance of other people's uniqueness. Um, it's almost, I talked about this like a little bit in the post, but it's like everyone who has unique perspectives, there's more of a ability to hold space and find value in that uniqueness. And without necessarily losing our own ideas or our individuality, but it's almost like we're specialized cells in a body, and it's we recognize the importance of all those specialized cells.
Mm.
And so we're able to work as kin, as the whole human system, to create
Hmm.
greater health in our world.
I love that.
Anyway, that's a lot, but yeah,
I
that's
love
yeah.
that though. You're like, we're all
Yeah.
cells in a larger organism.
Yeah.
We
So
are, yeah. Oh, and what a healthy way to think of it too.
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
wow, and then dance. Tell me just at least a little bit about how you incorporate dancing and your relationship with dance into
Yeah.
this worldview.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah. I guess yeah, so dance to me similar to hypnosis, it really calls us to get into our bodies and really tap into the subconscious. I think in my what I've learned and in my like perspective, we hold a lot of like as they say the body keeps the score, right? So we hold a lot of our stuff in our body, and through hypnosis, through dance, we're opening up the subconscious mind and allowing our body to speak. Um, Dance for me has always been a very healing process, and it's a form of communication. So if I'm like, when I'm just improv dancing, say, and I'm like, if I'm clutching my hands a lot, or like, there's like this like retraction almost.
Traction.
Yes. I wonder, like, okay, what is that communicating to me? What am I trying to say through that? And
That's a lot of reflexive in the moment reflection.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Wow.
yeah. And I think that's the power of it because it is like you said, it's in the moment. We
Right.
can't do anything other than in the moment. You know, we can have all these plans, but we only take action and exist in the moment. So when I'm doing these things, I'm like, okay, how does that what does that communicate? And it is like a ritual. Or if I want to, put myself more in a state of joy, I think, okay, how can I reflect joy in my body and in my movement, or gratitude, or yeah, or if
Right.
I'm like yeah, or if I'm doing that and I'm like, oh my god, like I'm trying to be joyful, but I'm like, oh fuck, like
It's
in
not
my stomach I
it's
feel
not
like killing
coming out. Yeah.
myself. Sorry, TMI. Or like rather cut that.
I can't.
Oh,
I
sorry.
can bleep
Um,
it.
that's okay. Um,
Okay.
but like I'm like, oh my god, okay, where is that coming from? And
Right.
so it's like being to like expressing that through movement and holding space for it, not seeing it as like something that I need to get rid of, but rather it's something that I can dance with because it's showing me something about myself or about my experiences that perhaps I haven't been aware of. And so wherever that wound is or wherever that energy is, I just am present with it. And that allows it to fade and to pass, and it becomes less. I use the word exciting. It's not so much like, ooh, the drama, and oh my gosh, like this is so. It's like, okay, like yeah, that happened. Okay, I can move on from it now. It almost like as we heal, we kind of get bored with the drama and the trauma, and we're like, yeah, that like I can't change that. That happened. Like,
Right.
what else? Like,
And
sure.
yes.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. It's like it's like this sense of like, girl, yeah, I work too. I like sure, like
Yeah.
whatever. Like it doesn't trigger us as much, right?
We hope,
Because it's
yeah.
like,
That
yeah, it
mhm.
just we let it go. And I have this saying, it's like a chapter in our book, but it's not like the whole book. It
Right.
influences the other chapters, but it doesn't need to lead the narrative. Yeah.
Totally.
So
I love that.
yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So, and really, I'm hearing three different like layers to the
Hmm.
worldview. Two of them are really focused on embodied, like in the moment experiences, and one of them is almost it's a divinative exploration of different relationships of meaning between like self and the world.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I'm hearing the way you're describing your practice with astrology.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I think that I like the way you put that. For me, I came upon astrology at a point in my life where I was dancing a lot. I was going to join a ballet company when I was 18, and I was scared, well, shitless. I was like, I have no idea. I don't know who the fuck I am, pardon me. But like I was like,
Valid.
girl, I don't know what the hell. Like I had no idea who I was. And the thought of like joining this company was terrifying to me. Um
I'd be
and so
scared.
yeah, I was like, I mean, I went to a ballet academy and I was like, okay, this is what I'm training for, so like, yeah, let's do it. Um but yeah, I think that I came on upon astrology during that time, and it gave me a deeper understanding of who I am, as well as how I interact with the world in relationships, the certain patterns that I tend to attract. Um, and it was for me, the first and foremost for me, I came upon it as a tool for self awareness and knowing who I am. Oh,
That's
yeah,
cool. Yeah.
yeah. But it does have like this kind of more like, woo woo thing. um I mean, I guess dance therapy is too, or dance, somatic practice, yeah. Um but yeah, so yeah, I guess astrology, when kind of taken from like a soul level, it is about building more consciousness in your
Mm-hmm.
day-to-day life. So when things come up, it's not you're like, there's more of an awareness, like, oh, for example, if you have Saturn, say you have Saturn in the seventh house, just a random placement, you might attract partners that are older than you and that you want to be responsible for you. It's it can
I didn't
be
know the stars determined that one.
well,
I'm
it's like, it's
upset.
who's to say, like, who, but like, or what
Right.
it, what's the causation, right? But it's like, okay, you can be more aware of that, and it's not like it locks you into that pattern. I don't see astrology as like a death sentence. It's more like a roadmap, so you can be like, oh, there's a pitfall there that I am gonna have to be aware of. And sometimes it is a swamp that you have to trudge through, but you can get through the other side. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's just building an awareness of your life, and also like how you create more consciousness through that experience.
Yeah. I,
Yeah.
I think about ritual a lot when I think about creating consciousness with presence. It's like the
Mm.
ritualization. I do a lot of ritual work of like, oh, always doing the same pattern in the same way, but like because I think it's important, and doing it with intentionality and um, towards like larger goals and that kind of like like practical magic sort of thing, I guess. Just like that
Yeah.
pragmatic. Oh, we're gonna make this a magic spell because it's better that way. To be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
hear you. No, I think that's, intelligent work, right?
Mm,
Um,
thinking.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is conscious. It's like, we set our energy like towards moving towards a goal, right? We do that in the present, but then we also take steps energetically and physically. I think if both of those aren't aligned, then our goals don't manifest, right?
Mm,
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Geez, that's a real one.
Yeah.
How
Well, right, right.
Yeah. Wow. I feel like every time my goals have not manifested, it has been due to that sort of misalignment of energy and
Yeah.
yeah, pragmatic moves.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the duality of being a human, right? It's
Right.
like this is like the divine, and then this is like the material aspect, and so like we kind of exist in that midpoint where we recognize on some level that we're infinite, but then like if we're just like inert and sitting in the physical world, like sure we feel a sense of peace, but in my opinion that's like not why we're here. Like we are here to be like bringing that divinity across the material plane and
Right.
like existing within it. And like once we find that sweet spot, it's great. Like we're like, ah! Like, that's presence. That's like being alive.
Totally. That's
Yeah.
amazing. What a great way to describe that. And like that's a very iconic symbol across so
Yes.
many different cultures. And the way that you
Yes.
described that could have applied to like five different spiritual practice like or ideologies that I can think of. Just this like
Yeah.
duality of the physical and the metaphysical, and the way that the interaction between them is showing up in your daily life and practices.
Sure.
Uh,
Sure.
I
Yeah.
love being able to draw things back to universal like um, threads and being like, oh, I see this
Yeah.
thread across so many places, and just
Yes.
that cross. One of the first things I thought of too was like the meme, like compass. You know, it's like the different
Oh.
political compasses. Yeah, but it can be any, like, it's really a
Yeah.
meme compass at that point. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was one
I
of
know
my
what you
first thoughts. I was like, oh, humans are pretty good at like this fourth dimensional thinking.
mean. Yeah. Yeah. That's so fun. Yeah.
uh,
But yeah. 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 I.
wow.
I. Yeah. That's been. I think I first heard that concept back in 2020. It was yeah during like this kind of electional time. It was right before I was watching. I really was like obsessed with Marianne Williamson because she's a very like spiritual like, and she was in the running for the Democratic Party like candidate at the time, and she was like on the debate, well, whatever. But I was just watching a lot of interviews with her, and one of the things that she talked about was like in is that kind of cross of
Mm.
that sense of like the divinity there and the material there, and it's at that center point. I think that she said that's where we find God in the truest sense, and
Mm.
people have other words for it. um but yeah, it's kind of this, and that's like what she said, the symbolism, I grew up Catholic, of the cross
Mm.
um is that center point. That's where the divinity is. Yeah, it's not. It's not in escaping the material world, because
Right.
in that, and I think that's like when we have that separation, that's where a lot of like not only neuroses or materialism and even hypocrisy come in. Like you see with certain religious traditions, like um, trying to think, but like in certain like Christian or Catholic traditions, when at certain different times in history it's been like, oh, renounce the material world, and then you see like the Vatican, which it's so opulent and
Right.
so full of like, right, and then
This
I mean, and I
hypocrisy.
don't, yeah, there's hypocrisy, right? I mean, hopefully I won't have people trying to whatever. Anyway,
I don't
I mean
think so.
I know, girl, it is what it is. Human, sorry.
It's good. I love being called girl. It's fine.
Okay, okay, I know. Okay. I'm
You're
like,
like, oh gosh.
I'm like, they're all gonna come for me.
Every time, like,
But
which group am I angering?
right, ever.
Yes.
No, but yeah, yeah. I mean, you see that like when there is, and that is the hypocrisy. It's like there is no renunciation of either. I think when we try to put one as above the other in this human experience, um, it doesn't quite work. Because
Right.
if we're neglecting the material, then we don't, I think, have a full breadth and experience of what we're meant to learn as humans,
Hmm.
like in kind of transversing space and time in this
Right.
way.
What's the point
But
in
I,
being bound to our physical mortality if it's not to learn something from the physical
yeah,
realm? Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But like, and then also though, if we like neglect the divinity and there's just the material, it's like, well, it just all becomes kind of like meaningless, and at least in my perspective. Like, sure, we can have this, like, we can have all these riches materially, and like, it's important that we are like, you know, connected with the material world and we can provide for ourselves and in order to meet our purpose and our dreams, right? And that looks different for everyone. But if we're just focused on that and there's no spiritual dimension, like, I don't know, things become meaningless. And
Right.
maybe that's okay. I mean, I
I mean,
like, in a way, isn't
I
that beautiful too?
in its own, I mean, it's entropy, I guess.
Yeah,
Entropy has its own beauty. I do think that, you know, meaning really has to be created
yes.
by our interpretation of this world. So I think that there is there is energy loss in participating in the material world without doing some kind of meaning creation at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's almost like an energy waste to
Mm-hmm.
just be only in this meaningless plane, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that interpretation of the physical and giving it meaning through interpreting it, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yes.
you are going to be giving it meaning through interpreting it no matter what. And
Right.
in order to engage with it in a way that's useful to you, you usually have to interpret it somehow. So like choosing which like how much meaning you are trying to give or doing it with intention can be such just a powerful choice even at that level to be like I'm going to intentionally engage with the idea of creating meaning from my
Sure.
actions or like interpreting the world meaningfully.
Sure. Wow.
Yeah.
No, I really like that. Yeah.
I
That.
know that was
Yeah.
a little
Brilliant.
like rabbit holey, but um, gosh, everything you said just made me think of so many more things that I want to talk about along.
I have a book as well that this conversation, like, I mean, it's really like where I'm drawing a lot of the info from. This
Mm,
is called Money and the Meaning of Life by Jacob Needleman. It's really
nice. Okay.
I think, well, and he agrees, I think, with a lot of the things that what you just said, like, kind of, we as people like imbue this world with meaning, like, inherently. This is my understanding. Inherently, the material world doesn't have meaning.
Right.
It's almost like we inhabit that meaning from this more like infinite space, and we're able to create meaning in
Yeah.
this world through it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so yeah,
That's so cool.
yeah,
I'm a little caught up in how much power that really is for like people
yeah,
to give so much
truly,
meaning, yeah, to the world just
true,
through seeing it, participating in
yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
I know, it's a lot.
It always is. It always is because both of it, we can both just go so far into the realm of thinking about these things. It's really
Yeah,
cool.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I do love seeing the notifications on YouTube pop up whenever you post a new video.
Oh.
Because, like I said, I don't really think about astrology that much. It never, it more, if I was choosing a means of self reflection, it was tarot.
Mhm.
So, and, or just journaling. And so those
Yeah.
are my two like go-to options. And so astrology
Right.
kind of was always on my peripheral.
Right.
And
Right.
so whenever I see you posting about it, it's the only way that it enters my life. It otherwise the very concept of it does not intrude upon my day to day like cognitive
No, that
realm.
I get that.
So you're
Yeah.
like, oh, it will.
So I'm like this is the
But
gateway now.
it is though, it is, because
Yeah.
it's the main way that I am being exposed to it. And when I play your videos, or when I see the video titles, even just at that level of influence, it's giving me a positive and like ready to learn sort of experience that has been really nice. Just subscribing to your channel, I know that seems like such a minimal thing, right? Like I've barely watched, so I've gone through some of your videos just to be like, oh, what are you about? But
Yeah.
as far as like getting the influence, I'm really just seeing your video titles, and it's making a difference in my life. And it's nice to be reminded of alternative perspectives and viewpoints and methodology for self-reflection. It's nice to be reminded that I can always learn new ones, and that I can always explore like more depth in the things I think I do know.
Right.
There's a lot for me that like it's just whenever you post a video, I get a notification and it changes my life slightly in this really sweet way. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much. That's
Yeah.
yeah. I think I appreciate you. That is my intention, is to provide information for people so that they can empower themselves. Yeah. And I think that through my channel, I see it as a mode of like really just to express who I am. And I think sharing that information is part of who I am and why I'm here. And the cool thing about astrology is that while it is like, we're looking at an external thing, it does provide us like a mirror into ourselves in which we can see these things interplaying. And I like not to get too caught up in externalizing. Yeah. Um, I think sometimes in my practice, I have had a tendency to be like, okay, like this is happening here this day, and like that's why like X, Y, or Z, or like I'm intentional about not seeing it as a gridlock or like a um a written out fate, if you will. I think that can sometimes get in the way of the living, like we were talking about. Too much like of this, not enough
Right.
of like living in the present, right?
Totally.
And so yeah, and so I think that's part of it is cool to know and to look at, especially like if I'm like, oh my gosh, why am I like feeling a lot? I'll never forget, like I called one of my mentors. I was like, I'm just feeling so heavy lately, and like I don't know, there's so much. And she's like, well, have you looked at the stars? Aren't you're an astrologer, aren't you? And I was like, I
Oh no. Okay. Yay. So
okay.
yeah, you cut off right at the part where she was like, you're an astrologer who hasn't consulted the stars.
Oh right, yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
I did, and I was like, oh, Pluto is back in Capricorn because it went into Aquarius briefly, and then it regresses, and not on the 19th it will not be going back to Capricorn, like period, for the rest of our lifetime.
Oh
And I was like,
wow.
oh my god, okay, that's why I'm feeling so heavy. I'm like, all right, sure, this makes sense. And I mean,
Oh no. You have been muted. Oh, there you go.
okay, so it can be like this indication that it can set a timetable, especially with transits, as to like certain energies that are coming in. And there can be like this preparation or a sense of opportunity or even challenge. And so, yeah, being able to just use that as a way of finding order in the chaos and being like, oh, okay, so for example, Uranus is opposite my moon right now, and
Mm.
Uranus is at like the later degrees, the third decan, if you will, of Taurus.
Mm.
And so I'm like, okay, this is calling me to really be revolutionary in how I approach my emotions and healing. And it's bringing up a lot from the surface, from below the surface, for me to like kind of develop a new sense of self through. Um, and just being really clear on who I am and my approach to healing has really been revolutionized lately.
Cool.
Um, yeah, and so like but it's like, okay, like I'm aware of that and I can see that and I can maybe even like put more intention in the present for that. And sometimes I'm just like, it's happening, and then I look at it like a month or a year later and I'm like, oh, yeah, that checks out. That's what was happening.
Yeah, I relate to that
So,
too.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, so astrology, like, I think of it kind of like, I don't know, there's something that I'm trying to communicate in regards to it. Um, Specifically, like, I think of the externalization of, like, the divine, right? Because I think in, like, the Judeo Christian religions, to name, I guess, like, three, like, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism,
Sure.
there's this idea of God existing externally.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a God we pray to. I guess I grew up Catholic. I still love the spirituality of Catholicism. I don't necessarily align with the church per se, the Catholic Church, but like Catholicism does have the Holy Spirit, which is an
Sure.
extension of God that is said to be within all of us.
Mm-hmm.
But so some religions there's an external experience of God, yeah.
Right.
While in say more Eastern religions, it's this idea of like, for example, being connected with the present moment, and
Mm.
that is divinity, or that is like the most real experience that we have as human beings is being present. And I really I find a lot of peace in connecting with that presence and believing that the divine, the truth, reality is in being present. And there's nothing else that is real. I think it's kind of beautiful. But drawing that back to astrology, um, I think it's important to be present with the energies reflected, but it's all just energy. We don't have to see these planets as like dictators or dominating us in our lives, but they can be avenues into deeper awareness and understanding. I think it depends on the relationship that we hold with it. And it's interesting also because this is like a maxim for astrologers. People who are more doubtful or dislike astrology or like find it or just like dislike it or are actively like against it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these people tend to be more locked into their charts. Depends on the level of awareness, right? I'm not saying everyone who dislikes
Right.
astrology is like an unconscious fool. That's not true.
But that's
That's not true.
hilarious. Locked into
But
their charts, unconscious fool. I'm gonna remember that those two are the.
please don't.
No, I know, I know. Peace and love. That's not what
I know.
astrology is trying to spread.
I love everyone.
I
No.
locked into their charts. Oh my god. Oh, what a
But it's like if you aren't aware of these things
yeah.
inside of you and you're actively like, oh, that can apply
Sure.
to anyone, like, okay, like, sure, these energies are in everyone, but if you're not seeing with specificity, like,
That you have patterns.
yeah, just certain patterns. And, astrology doesn't work for everyone. Not everyone is like, that's not their path. That's okay. Like, it doesn't make sense, or it's not, like,
It's just
valid, or, yeah, or just some people's truth, and that's okay. Um, I guess the importance is in understanding and seeing who you are, and being aware of who you are. I think that is how we create peace in ourselves, um, through just like an open and honest expression of ourselves without judgment. As kind of ugly as we might think it is. Um,
And presence with ourselves in those moments. Yeah. And
yes.
that's the practice that you are building so intentionally through
Yeah.
divinity work, or yeah, like divination work, divinity work, um, different but related things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, and I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on locked into their charts because it
Oh, yeah.
struck me as such a relatable um, complaint to have of people sometimes, even
Mhm.
outside of astrology, right? Like those people are locked into their patterns and they can't see the
Mhm.
way their patterns are affecting their lives, or they're locked
Mhm.
into, a certain viewpoint or way of thinking, and they can't see how directly, their complaint is related to the way of thinking. That, like,
Mhm.
um, frustration with the unaware or like unrealized aspects of
Right.
people's like own internal work or self-awareness.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, in a sense, like I think this comes to the idea of free will, right? Like how much, which is also it's also been something on my mind recently. There's a clip that I've not don't come for me, but I've never seen The Matrix.
Oh my
Um,
god.
I
I
but I saw
You should see The Matrix.
I should.
You
I've
really
heard
should.
right.
It's
I've heard
great.
so many great things about it,
Yeah.
but I just haven't maybe I don't know. I think anyway.
I wouldn't
So
mind
one
if
of
they did a reboot.
haven't they? Didn't the directors make a second one?
Oh, there are like sequels, but I wouldn't mind if they
Oh,
did like a cinematic update to the
oh,
story and just
okay,
recast and they
okay,
redid The Matrix. I don't think it's
oh,
time yet, but I
okay,
won't mind when they do it because I think they'll capture a new audience when they do. But
sure,
anyway,
that makes sense.
go
Okay,
on.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. So, yeah, so this clip in it, it was saying that like I think there's a woman on a bench who had like a piece of candy, and she was offering it to what's the main character. I,
Okay.
I
Nero,
don't
Neo.
so yes,
Yeah,
sure, him,
that guy.
them.
Trench coat boy. Yeah.
um, that human, and I think that she was saying like, "Do you want a piece of candy?" And the main character was like, "Oh, you already know what I'm going to choose, so why is it like that I really have a choice?" And she was saying like, it's not so much the action that you take, but it's and this isn't the exact quote, of course, but it's like how what you internally pick up, learn, and perceive through that choice. That's where we have a sense of consciousness and flow. And I thought that was really interesting because I think in my own experience, like I do feel like, and there's certain like I even um, neuropsychology around this that when we're deciding on something, we already have the decision made, but it's just like kind of bringing it forth and out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I've experienced this where I'm like, oh, I don't know if I probably shouldn't do this, or like, but I've changed my relationship with that, and I say like, it's almost like I say a prayer, um, where here, I don't know if you can hear my roommate's cat in the background.
I
Um,
can. I was like, is that a
okay,
baby? You are muted. That is a very vocal cat. Impressive. Like, is it dinner time or just loud? No, I can't hear you. I'm just guessing what you're saying. Yeah. There. No. I don't know. I think you hit like a manual button to mute on your like actual laptop. And then you must have muted either within the program, the browser, or
Look
the
at me just
operating
making
system.
stuff
At
up.
some level, there's some other.
There's some other.
Oh! Oh, you tried to do the noise suppression and then everything was ruined. Oh no. Was it through the computer or through the. Okay. Oh, it was in the meeting? The app has noise suppression? I can try, like, muting and unmuting you. Nope. Oh, there's the noise suppression. I found it. I can't hear you. Can you hear me? What? No, I can't hear you. Should I leave and come back? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Give it a try. Can you hear me? You can't hear me? Ah! Please consider. It told me to mute my own mic. Jitsi, what's wrong with you? Dismiss. Okay, whatever.
think it
Let's
was
both leave
Jitsy's
and come
fault.
back.
I think it kind
Okay.
Okay.
Yay, we're
So
back.
we're back. So we were talking about like that scene in the Matrix, and well, yeah, I think so. Yeah, we have like these like decisions that we've already kind of made, and we're just kind of acting them out. And I think where our sense of freedom comes from is from an internal place where we're able to like take that experience, digest it, learn from it. And I think in learning from it and consciously being present with it, I think that's when we create change in our lives externally.
I love that.
That's yeah, that's been my experience. So it's like it's not in taking the candy that it's not in that external choice that really we perhaps are in control, but it's more so in what we learn from taking the candy and how that informs our next decision. And maybe we don't take the candy the next time and then we learn from that. And like, yeah, that's just kind of where, yeah, that's my opinion on it. And it's similar like with the astrology charts, bringing it back there is like, we have these experiences and people can be like, oh, it's because I'm a Leo. It's like, bitch, no, it's not. um, but
You don't know.
right. But like, but I think there's like but there's a lesson to learn there. And maybe it is because you're a Leo, but it's like not
That's not
but it's
yeah,
yeah, it's not an excuse.
right.
That being said, it's like coming in conscious contact with that experience. And so maybe it's, you know, your soul chose to have that energy come in for you, and like, because you chose to be born, your soul chose to be born at that certain time. This is my like perspective or my belief.
Right.
And so you drew in that experience to learn from something, and you had a choice in how you interpreted it or how you like kind of learned from it and were able to grow through it. Yeah, or just what energies you kind of wanted to or needed to experience in order to become fuller or more who you are. That's my perspective.
Cool. I like the implication that you have a sense of agency beyond the veil, like prior to birth, theoretically also after death, but there's agency there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
Cool.
So
Yeah, this idea of like having a certain I don't know, like set amount of determinants that's gonna help decide what your behavior is, that like determinism idea, and then the choice making being within that field, like in that moment, in that range of options, knowing what your choice would be and then deciding if you're still gonna do it. That level of presence is really hard for like
sure,
all the
it's a
time decision
paradox.
making, but this practice of intentionally being present with self through reflexive and reflective work, whether it's astrology or, my sister loves tarot. I really love journaling, but I will do tarot when I need that extra feeling of like um, tapping into practices that are shared. I think that shared aspect is really important. I know most of how I have felt for people who practice astrology with as much like fleshed out knowledge as you have. I'm always just jealous that you have so much like specific knowledge about this entire region of thought and knowledge that you can use in your daily life with that much specificity. I think that's really cool. So just that anything that helps you with that kind of reflexive in the moment thinking is going to help you with decision making because of that relationship. And I think it's cool that we managed to talk about all of the different aspects
Sure.
from different areas.
Yeah.
From
Well,
different
yeah, I think
angles.
right. No, it's interesting that I mean, I've never thought of like connecting with like a practice like tarot or astrology as like as a collective practice slash space. But like that's just really interesting to think of. I guess because it has been very individual.
Right. And I am like, I first of all think in groups a lot. So I do a lot of group, like you're in this group and you're in that group. So it is a bit of me just like categorizing like people who do astrology. But because I've never actively engaged with the practice, but always had a fairly positive relationship with people who do, I tend to think of you as a collective, I guess, probably more than you would necessarily think of yourselves.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I mean,
But it is
yeah.
a shared tradition, right? Like it's a practice that can be done individually, but it is like shared, collectively held, like knowledge and information.
Sure. I guess what comes to mind for me is how a lot, I think, what we do as humans, and this is interesting because Pluto going into Aquarius will be thinking in terms of groups. Um, but yeah, because Aquarius is groups. Um,
Okay.
but it's interesting because I think of when you were talking about tarot, how tarot's like a more of a communal practice. I think of like all the people that do tarot and how there's shared meaning in the cards, but people have their own individual like flavors and style to it. And the same is for astrology. But I also, and you were talking about journaling as well. I mean, even within that, like there is a shared kind of yeah, there's a sharedness to that, for lack of better
Yeah,
words, in
this
a
like
way.
identity.
You know?
Me and
Yeah, like
becoming journalers.
yeah, or
Right.
even like like that people know it as a practice, and it's
Right.
like, right, right, and like,
Right.
is that good or bad? Like, should we label it, or like, yeah, it's just kind of like I've never really. That's a new connection in my brain, a new neural thing.
Cool.
I've never thought of it like that. So yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
Anyway,
I love
yeah,
a good new neural branch.
yeah, right. So anyway, yeah,
Yeah. Oh, well, and you have to think. I mean, I would categorize people who do meditation or ecstatic dance, like those would be other groups who are engaged in practices for like self-reflection, like anything that helps with self-regulation or self-actualization. I tend to
mm,
broadly put into, together with each other. And I think I put astrology right in there with therapy. Like all
mm,
of these things are kind of part of a larger desire for growth. That,
interesting.
yeah. So for me, I'm like, oh, these are just different ways people try to grow and connect with themselves. And so they're paths, I guess.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
I don't know where I
Huh.
was going with that really,
No,
but
no, no, yeah,
I think it's just so interesting. You have three different specializations in healing, like paths. What I see as healing paths, and you kind of
sure.
emphasize along three dimensions that have a lot of
Yeah,
overlap. But I think it gives you a level of depth that you can speak from on healing topics that I don't see a whole lot of other people layering
thank you.
in
Wow.
that
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. It's a journey. It is a journey, and it has been a journey to like learn how to connect them, because I'm like astrology, dance, and then the hypnosis. I'm like, bitch, what do you like? What? Like, how do I
Yeah.
put this
Right. And
together?
how do you make
Like,
it like a sustainable like practice in work and in life, like not just your life
yeah,
but in supporting others or in
yeah,
um yeah, just
yeah.
that's
I,
yeah, go on.
I, yeah, yeah.
I
I
just
mean,
that sounds so challenging to me.
yeah. So, I mean, honestly, there is this blending that I do. They hold like individual areas in my life, but they do blend at certain points while still maintaining their individuality. Like I've danced professionally before, like I still do dance like freelance professionally, like in ballets or different things like that. Um, and I teach dance.
Nice.
Without like I bring in some of those things like that I've learned like in Tai Chi, like there's a certain way you hold your mouth and your tongue in order to relax you. And I'm like, I bring that into my ballet class. I'm like, okay, like hold, relax your jaw, because if you clench
Cool.
your jaw, your pelvis is, yeah,
Yeah.
gonna be tight. But I guess like I blend it in different ways. Like dance is very hypnotic. And so being able to understand how hypnosis works, I'm able to connect with people more so and be able to like help them access different things perhaps on a more subconscious level, or guide them in doing so through doing so myself. Um, and then also with astrology, I do events where, say, on full moons or new moons, I'll dance with people on the beach. And I'm explain the astrology of the new moon or the full moon, and then from there I create a ritual slash a practice that we dance to reflect that energy, releasing certain things that on the full moons and creating new manifestations. Or on the new moons, there's also like less release work and more of that seed planting work on the new moons, because that's reflective of the lunar cycle. New moons typically, so I've researched, are intentional for planting those seeds. Full moons are gratitude for things that the seeds that we've sown, reaping the benefits or reaping those manifestations. But yeah, so I blend it in different ways. Like it all is connected. It's just learning and seeing how it's connected, and being present with that awareness as I'm dancing, even when I'm like, dancing for like I'm doing guesting, it's called, for Studios Nutcracker, and I can be like, okay, I'm present in this moment. I'm letting go of like fear or whatever, um, and when things come up for me where I find blockages, I journal about them. And that's like that sense of awareness, like, oh, it's coming up from my subconscious. I have work to do with this. I can release this, and therefore I can be more intentional about being present. I'm not as laden with these things where I feel worried or anxious or fearful or shameful. And that's part of like the hypnosis, like kind of like allowing that to come up and out of my body, and even just being aware of it in my body as I'm dancing and letting it go and bringing in something else.
That's
And
so
I think
cool.
dance
Yeah.
helps with that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
dance
so yeah.
definitely helps with that. I know
Yeah.
that in my own body too. Just like the swiftness
Yeah.
that you can process an emotion if you dance it out is wild compared to if
Unbelievable.
you try to like sit still and process an emotion versus dancing it out, like you're
Right.
not gonna get a whole lot done. Dancing it out will go way faster.
So true. I agree. I agree.
Yep.
So anyway, but yeah. Um, yeah. I think there's connections with like with everything, like, and it's just being able to. For me, it's been being able to have the courage to be like, yeah, we're dancing and we're doing an astrology thing. Like, I know that sounds, for me, I was like, I know that sounds fucking weird, but like, we're doing it. Like, come if you want. And people show up. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you for sharing so much today and just like being so open with your perspective and your heart. It was very nice to meet you.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate you, Cozy. No, thank you for creating this space, and yeah, it's a privilege to be able to converse with you and hear your thoughts and your perspectives. And yeah, you're a wonderful facilitator, and um, yeah, thank you for being you. Yay!
Yay! I'm gonna stop recording so that I stop being. Oh my god, I'm so bad at taking compliments. Oh, that was so cool.
Okay.